Hey, welcome back to another Just 15 Mins. How are you? Hope you're all well out there in the land of the internets. Okay, so what have we got this time around? Well, we're playing with AppSmith, which is a low-code, open source low-code development environment. And I've used quite a few of these low-code environments, and a lot of them very good. But I have to say, AppSmith seems to be one of those, for me. I know it's like flavors of ice cream. It's what you get used to. But it's one of the most intuitive, easy to use sort of platforms out there. It's open source, so let's have a look at the pricing to start with, because that's always a good start. So for individual developers, small teams, you've got a completely free version, up to 5 users, and they host it in their cloud, essentially. I don't know which cloud it is, actually. Could be AWS, but I'm not sure. But it's got quite a lot of features, including version control with Git as well, which I'll show a little bit later. But it's pretty useful for $0. And obviously, you can go up the pricing scale. But interestingly, they also have a community open source version. Okay, read the license, obviously, but you can see they use this at a lot of different companies. But the community version is right now what I'm using, and the reason for that is my trusty Docker desktop as ever. Is I've got AppSmith running locally, okay, in a Docker container at the moment. So I can run that locally where I am at the moment. I can again push that Docker container up into any environment up in the cloud, wherever it is that I want it to go. Or indeed, I could simply say, okay, I can start with free and host it in their cloud. Okay, but I'm using the community edition just to run it in Docker locally. You can run, by the way, the enterprise edition, as they call it, in Docker as well. So it doesn't negate that, but I'm just using the community edition, the completely open source edition. You can go and have a look on GitHub, in fact, if you want to have a look. It's totally open source, and that is pretty immense. So essentially, it has a lot of really interesting features. Like I say, you can self-host it. There's lots of examples, and you can see even in this small little window down here, it's a typical sort of builder, but it's just well thought through, in my personal opinion. So okay, so how did I get this running locally? Well, let's start. I went into my trusty Docker desktop. Okay, all I ended up doing actually is, because they've got Docker Hub put in here, that, by the way, they've got really good documentation. You can go to the documentation on AppSmith and they'll show you how to use Docker Compose. If you're not familiar with that, don't worry. But this is Docker Hub, and all I did was look for AppSmith, and I think AppSmith, if I can spell, CE, which, if you look at their documentation, it'll show this. Okay, and if you have a look in there, you'll see that's the one that's the one that you really need for the community edition, CE at the end. Okay, and you can click that. You can run. You literally just need to click it. You can download the Docker image and then run it later, or you can simply say run. Okay, and that's what I've done. I've got an image there, which is the latest AppSmith image. And by the way, when there's upgrades, you can do the little ... and you can pull the new latest image, or whichever one. The tag is the latest, but you could pick like a nightly build if you really wanted to. Anyway, the point being is, once you've run this, you've now got a container running. And by the way, when you run the container, there'll be some options there that you can map the Docker container ports to your local host, meaning your your PC, your laptop, whatever it is. Okay, so just make sure that you do that when you run a container, otherwise you won't see anything. Okay, so with that running, basically I get to here, okay, which is AppSmith running localhost, because it's running in the Docker container. Again, if you run this in the cloud, it's going to be the same sort of experience anyway. Okay, so what I'm going to do is build a really basic application, but I say basic, you know, it's going to build it in a few minutes, whereas if you did this manually, even with AI, it might take you slightly longer. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to create a new application here. There are templates, you can export and import, there's all sorts of lovely things, but I'm just going to create just a new application. Okay, and here we are. We've got a bunch of widgets, we've got a canvas area, we can run and test them. You've got the properties that will show up over here, you can deploy them, and you can connect to Git down here for the source control, okay, which is very useful. There's probably others. Retool is another favorite that I've used, but there's probably a few other of these low-code environments that do integrate with Git, but source control is one of those things. It's often overlooked, but as you make a change, so okay, if I go and drag on a grid or something like that, you know, I can commit that change to the source control. And then obviously if I go and make a problem, you know, delete it by accident, do something, make something wrong, you can roll back to that version. It's just typical source control stuff. No, you know, that's not groundbreaking, but it is groundbreaking, I think, to be built into something like a low-code environment like this. Okay, so anyway, the first thing that we would like to do is have a look at well, there's loads of little components, by the way. Yeah, what you'd expect, you literally just drag them on, okay, and then you can do things like, you know, you can style it, label it. There's themes, by the way, behind all of this. You can change all the properties, but also you can tie it with data bound. Okay, so I haven't got any data at the moment, but you can hook it up to a database really, really simply. Okay, but right now, let me just delete that one. Sorry, it's up there. I did a right mouse click. Okay, so let's go back to the down at the bottom here is data sources. That's what I wanted to show. Now, excuse me, I've already set one up and I'll explain what I've done there. It's quite easy, but you can actually add lots of different data sources, which is another really quite amazing thing. Okay, so from a database perspective, you've got lots of options here. Okay, you've got Postgres, which is very, very popular. And by the way, there's a lot of these Postgres, like Superbase and things like that, that you can hook into, which are cloud-based and things like that. But anyway, I've used Microsoft SQL Server because I'm a little bit more familiar with that, but you've got lots of other options, MongoDB, you know, all sorts of things, Snowflake even. Okay, and you've got lots of other things like Google Sheets that you can jump into. There are a few premium connections, but we'll leave those alone at the moment. But the other interesting thing is that you've got REST API, so you can connect to virtually any REST API or indeed a GraphQL API. And it is remarkably simple to hook these things up. We'll do that in another video. Okay, but for now, I selected Microsoft SQL Server. Okay, that's where I got to this. Okay, now I could edit this. Okay, just to show you the properties. Okay, so I've selected that it's going to be read and write, and I'm using a free Azure SQL Server. Okay, so if I just go to my Azure portal here. Now, if you're not used to this, don't worry. I did a video on this a little while ago. It's a completely free 32 gig, which doesn't sound like a huge amount, but it is in database terms. You get that for free forever. indefinitely. There's a lot of, again, flavors of ice cream. If you don't want to use Azure, don't use Azure. Go and use something else. Go and use your own, environment or whatever it might be. But there's a lot of things around Azure. But yes, you do have to have a pay-as-you-go subscription. But, just use one of, I call them like the throwaway credit cards, the prepaid card. You could use that to make sure that you're not going to get, accidentally get, thousands of dollars being taken off your card. So, you can be sensible and use a bit of common sense here. But also the overage billing is disabled. So basically, the free monthly vCore amount, excuse me, is pretty much a month of use, which is, I can't remember the full details. Like I say, I've done a video. I'll put the link. But it's essentially a month's worth of usage, and it's typically, I don't know, 4 or 5 hours a day or something that you'd use this. But it's free, totally free, and it's 32 gig, and it's hosted, and it does backups, and you get basically the backup space as well to do those things. Now, I've just got an extremely, and I'm going to just use the inbuilt query editor in a second. I've got a simple table, and you'll see that in a minute. Okay, but anyway, that's what we've got. We've got a completely free Azure SQL database. There's lots of these offerings out there. If this isn't your flavor of ice cream, yep, fine. Go and have a look on Amazon, Google, or your own. Anything that you want, you can pretty much hook into. But that's what I've got there. Okay. In fact, what I'm going to do, the one thing to show there is, one thing I wanted to show you is you've got a connection string. So in the Azure portal, okay, you can have a look down under settings. It's got connection strings. Okay, so you can look in there to get the actual connection string. You can see where the link is there anyway, but if you go to connection strings, that's where you can get that. But one thing, because I'm working locally, I need to be able to set a server firewall. Okay, so if you click server firewall, and you'll have the option, I'm not going to do it now because I don't want to expose an IP address, but the idea is if you go and set the firewall, you can add your local, what your IP is, your gateway to this. And if you don't do that, you won't be able to connect through here. Okay, so let's do a quick test configuration. Yep, it's tested okay. I've got everything hooked up as I need to. Okay, so if I go back with that created, okay, I'll show you in a second. I've got one simple table that essentially is got a couple of lists of unicorn names. Of course, why wouldn't it? And the idea is, what we can do, yes, we can literally go back to the editor now and start building, the UI ourselves. Okay, but if you want to start, and again, there's templates, there's all sorts of things. Whilst you've got your database selected, you can see there, look, you've got to generate a new page. Okay, so let's generate. There's my data source. There's my, if I select there, is that showing? Oh, there it is. It popped up at the top. DBO users. I've got a little users database there. Okay, and it's already looked at that schema for the users and said, I can see some, fields there. I'm going to name the searchable one. It's an optional field, but by the way, this is just a starter thing. You can actually, like I say, build this from scratch. But let's do that. Okay, and hurrah, your application is ready to use. And sure enough, there we go. It's dropped in a data grid that you can change the name of. And this is the thing, where you see the little orange lines around, you can go and change those things. So I've just clicked into there. It's a text box, and I can go over and I can simply do, type users. something like that. Okay, but interestingly, and this is where it gets really quite exciting, is if you do a forward slash or a backslash, depending on what it is, you can add the data bindings in any of these areas, labels, text boxes, wherever. Okay, and it's really good. And also you can actually not going to do it in today's session because we're going to be running over as it is, but you can, if you've got some JavaScript knowledge, okay, you can write some JavaScript logic. It's really quite straightforward what you can actually do. There is an AI component to this now, of course, like everywhere. So you can even try that. But it's also got things like libraries. So you can add in, it's got Lodash at the moment, moment, funny enough, for the date time type thing. But you can load JavaScript libraries that you want to use, and you can just add more if you need them. Okay, it's really, really, really powerful. And whenever you do the I'll go back to the editor. Whenever you go back to any of those components, you can do the forward slash or backslash, whichever way. I never get that the right way around. And you can add, like I say, data bindings, or and I should say, you can interact with JavaScript as well. It makes it exceptionally powerful. It really does. But here we are, and it's brought back the data. I've got a GUID as an ID. That's why we've got that there. Okay. And as I select while I'm building this, you can see it's actually working as well. I mean, I can go to this little run here and you get a preview without all the editors, and it's, yep, it's there. I can go, you know, change all the details here, and it's proper, obviously, create, update, delete, CRUD. Although I've got a date time, there we go. I've got a date time issue there because that's not the right format, and that's where you can get a little bit of JavaScript, or there is actually some formatters built in. Okay, so yeah, there we go. So created that, and I think I've just realized actually I've got the wrong data type there. So anyway, I'm just going to reset that one. We'll get back to that in another one, but that's just a data format. Okay, but just to show you this is actually working, what I can do is in Azure Portal, it's got a little query editor. Okay, I can just log in. I think that's the right one, but I'm not going to chance it. These pop-up boxes can be annoying, can't they? Yep, they can. Anyway, if I just log in here, okay, yeah, you can see I've got like an online query editor. Now I've only got one table. Okay, I've got DBO users, and there are fields. Okay, so I'm just going to write an insert query just to do that. But you know what? It's got Copilot. I'm just going to say, right, one table. Yeah, create an insert statement to add a new unicorn. Okay, that's all I'm going to say. Generate the query, and hopefully it's all very live. Yeah, it's gone and generated it. It looks okay. Insert. Yeah, it's got an example. It's got the get date. So I'm going to accept that. And what the heck? Let's just run that. Yeah, I've got one affected row. It's run it basically. So if I go back to my application and hit refresh there, yeah, there we go. There's a new unicorn. Okay, so obviously my date time in my world is not working correctly, but anyway, that's okay. But we can, like I say, we can come back to the editor. I could go and have a look at that. I won't take too long to do that, but you can see there I've got a created at. I can go into the settings, and it's got source data. That's how it's picked up the tag there, look. So it's got a format, but the format's wrong. So I think somewhere down here there is actually a format or a regex or something like that. But anyway, that's easy enough to sort out for another day. Okay, but the idea is you can now then share this. Basically, you could make it a public application. That there's some details that you have to go through. Okay, and you can expose it with security. You could have it anonymous, but it's not a good idea necessarily. So you can add users, and that's where that 5 users comes in if it's a free version. But on the community edition, you can add a few other users as well. But you've got an application URL you can expose. But the other thing you can do is embed it. Okay, so you can actually embed this into your own web application, WordPress site, whatever it might be. Okay, so really powerful stuff. Worth a look at. Like I say, you're not limited just to a SQL database. It's got so many different connections there, including, like I said, any sort of REST API, GraphQL, which really does make this exceptionally powerful. And the way that it just works is really, really nice, I think, anyway. So really worth it. Open source. You can run it as a community edition, or you can take advantage of the free version. But that's what I've got for this time around. If you've liked this, please like and subscribe in a desperate sort of voice. But otherwise, take care, and we will catch you on the next one.